Both the US and Japan had the problem of invasions happening over water. Soldiers, arms, and provisions had to be shipped. The US shipped troops and tons of supplies, including massive amounts of food. Japanese soldiers were shipped with little, including fewer arms and little food. Japanese attacks required self sufficiency. This could mean more troops could be shipped, rapid advances, and quick victory, or brutalizing indigenous populations for supplies, or hunger. Call it starvation for the emperor. Japanese leadership showed little respect for their soldiers and none for their perceived enemies. New recruits had brutal training, focusing on self discipline and willpower. They were typically well fed during training, getting them the discipline and skills to achieve victories. They typically were given 4,000 calories a day, much more than civilians. After all, the purpose of creating an Asian empire was creating a rich population with plenty of food. Harakiri, seppuku, cutting the belly, was Japanese ritual suicide by disembowelment, a tradition from the samurai to restore honor. This was practiced by several generals when the war was lost. Of more concern was the later kamikaze, divine wind, pilots trained to crash their planes filled with bombs into enemy ships. The invasion of the Philippines started on December the 8th, 1941, with both bombing and ground troops. They captured Manila. Then American and Filipino troops made a last stand, leading to the Battle of Bataan. These troops eventually surrendered due to lack of ammunition and food, resulting in the Bataan death march of 78,000 allies, of which up to 18,000 died. When Japan attacked Burma in 1942, they caught the British at Rangoon flat-footed. The British retreated, leaving large stocks of food, which the Japanese called Churchill's rations. That included whiskey, canned food, coffee, butter, cheese, corned beef, cigarettes, and more. The British and Indian troops got better and survived with parachute drops. The Japanese took over much of Burma and declared a sham government with Burmese dissidents. The Japanese weren't routed until 1945. The Japanese planned to attack Port Moresby, New Guinea, as a foothold to invade Australia. This was stopped by the Battle of the Coral Sea in 1942. Instead, the Japanese started from the north part of New Guinea, soon suffering from malnutrition and tropical diseases, including malaria and dysentery. This was something of a disaster, with soldiers dying of starvation or suicide, then a counteroffensive by Australian and American forces. Australia was safe, but the Japanese still occupied parts of New Guinea until 1945. Japan took over islands across the Pacific. The indigenous subsistence farmers typically fled, having no interest being enslaved by the Japanese soldiers. Rabaul on New Britain became the Japanese forward supply base. The U.S. used submarines against Japanese shipping, sinking 285 merchant ships, leaving Japanese troops across the Pacific cut off from supplies, especially food. Guadalcanal is an island in the Solomon Islands, Japanese soldiers landed in May 1942. U.S. Marines with other allies landed in August 42, initially meeting little resistance. There were later land battles and major sea battles. The Japanese lost almost 20,000 dead, of which 8,500 were killed in battle, and most of the rest from starvation, plus 38 Japanese ships were sunk. U.S. casualties and sunk ships were somewhat smaller, with 72,000 killed and almost 8,000 wounded, plus 29 ships. Each side lost over 600 aircraft. The Japanese withdrew their remaining forces in February 1943. The American Pacific Fleet under Admiral Nimitz, along with allies including Britain and Australia, fought back. America was the industrial colossus, and ingenuity provided immense logistic support. In America, it was domestic abundance, especially food. How did the shift to a war footing create the American war machine? Next time on Food History and Mystery.